Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you to another Power to Fly Chat and Learn virtual event. Now, we're going to be talking today with Yomi Olufowoshe, but we're going to be discussing from curiosity to clarity, continuous learning, AI, and the power of mentorship. Now, Yomi is absolutely impressive. I can't wait for you to hear him speak. He's a strategic account manager at Esri, who is partnering with natural resources organizations to use spatial data, analytics, and GeoAI to make better decisions about land, energy, and the environment. Now, with over a decade of experience at the intersection of energy and technology, including roles at Halliburton and Google Cloud, Yomi helps organizations turn maps into insight and clarity within complex systems. Yomi was raised in Edmonton and educated in geosciences at the University of Texas at Austin. And he believes that technology is most powerful when it helps people ask better questions and act with intention. Now, outside of work, Yomi is committed to service and mentorship through organizations like Breakthrough and the Colorado Technology Society. He also enjoys Lego building, vinyl collecting, camping, and not American fashion, football. So, Yomi, I'm so excited to welcome you to the stage today. What else would you like our audience members to know about you?
Outside of everything first of all, Meg, it's a pleasure to be here and an honor to be here. Outside of everything you listed, I think the main thing I'd love the audience to know about me is that I'm always open to engaging and follow-ups as well. I find that it's important to continue the conversation after events like this as well. So if folks are interested in having a conversation with me on any of the themes or topics that we cover, my LinkedIn and my email will be available as well for the secondary conversations.
Excellent. Love to hear it. Okay, so we're going to be talking about how continuous learning and AI is going to be very important in our lives, as well as the power of mentorship. Now, you didn't start out with an AI background. I think probably nobody in this room did. What's your interest in learning AI analytics, and what was the first step towards you making that shift?
Yeah, for me, my interest was actually sparked when I was working at Google. At the time, I was an account executive focusing on enterprise sales across a range of different industries. And Google had, and still does to this day, a very interesting program called the Responsible AI Team. And one of the mandates for the team is kind of focusing on social good. So how can AI be used to benefit the world and to reduce implicit bias and to eliminate as much as possible a lot of the issues that we find with some of the limitations with AI, when it can just be skewed to the group that is used to refine and tune and train some of the technology there. So, I want to represent my community as part of that testing and volunteer group. And that gave me exposure to a global audience of colleagues who were, researchers, fellow volunteers as well, and just enthusiasts. And that really kind of sparked that initial interest for me, finding ways to use AI for responsible good.
Pretty cool. All right. Now, I think a lot of people feel very overwhelmed or unsure where they should start when it comes to continuous learning, especially for something as big and we'll say nebulous as AI. Can you tell us where you started and more about where your learning journey has taken you?
Yeah, so for me, actually, I consume a ton of information through YouTube. And so I actually started by, first of all, identifying some of the thought leaders in the space, both within, at the time, Google, where I was working, but also outside of the company itself. And I tried to identify people who were thought leaders in multiple industries as well, folks from technology, folks from energy, folks from finance and legal, because, the thing about AI that's really fascinating is we're still trying to make sense of how it's going to impact the world and how it's going to impact the general community and population as well. And so, finding those individuals who were leaders in those different spaces gave me exposure to identifying and sifting through the noise and like understanding what are the real trends that really matter. There's a lot of hype around AI and the impact it can have. Not a lot of it has actually been like quantifiable or has been achieved to date. So understanding what are the key trends to follow has been really helpful. Outside of YouTube, one of the things I really focused on as well is LinkedIn, kind of taking the same approach there. And then, one of the things I worked on is identifying some simple certifications and trainings that could just get me started. I think it's really important that there's a lot of learning you can do by consuming and watching and reading, but at some point you have to go from that digestion of the information to actually executing with it, putting it to practice as well. In my instance, the thing that I did first is I kind of built a career OS, a career co-pilot. I fed it a ton of information about myself, my experiences, my diverse experience and background. And I use it to kind of refine my ability to engage in new audiences and in new industries as well. So when I've made career pivots over the last 2.5, 3 years, I've always kind of had this AI career co-pilot as kind of my lieutenant helping me with that transition.
That is awesome. And I love that idea of kind of seeing it as subordinate isn't right, but like kind of seeing it as something, a tool that you can direct, I think is a really good way to put it. I know when we first started hearing about like, oh yeah, an AI, it's going to be the next big thing, blah blah. Like I know that a lot of people wanted us to think about it more like Instagram than we did
Hmm.
like, like a chemistry set, right? Like a chemistry set, you hand it to a kid and you expect them to like want an instruction book or like here's what we do. And it's like, no, this is more like Instagram. We put it in your hands and then you just sort of mess around with it and see what it does, see what you like, see what you don't like, what functions work for you. So I think to a certain extent, that's helped me at least to feel a little bit less like kind of stressed about it. What would you tell people who are like really unsure and incredibly hesitant? Start.
I mean, I like the way you phrase it with the Instagram analogy. I think that's actually really important. Instagram is my number one social media outlet, almost to a fault. And so, what I've actually spent the last few months trying to do there is to refine my algorithm, and so to actually refine the things and curate what I'm seeing in my feed. I have and I store a lot of information there. One of it in particular is around like AI resources and some of the content creators I follow there. So trying to surface more of those insights there as well. I think it's important to refine and tailor the things that you're exposing yourself to on the internet, and either through, like I said, YouTube, Instagram, whatever medium it is you're using to like engage and learn from. Find ways to surface the real like insights that will give you value. Right. I think there's like again, there's a lot of noise, and this can be just be a recurring theme for me. Eliminating the noise and getting to the real context that matters for you. Right. That's where the value is. For me in particular, it was kind of like building some new accounts focused specifically on the areas that I want to focus on, right? So if it's AI, then I'm going to make an Italian new account, primarily focused on that. That way I can just go as deep as I want in that topic and remove the noise and clutter and the distractions around me as well.
I like that. That's a really good idea. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about Esri a little bit. At Esri, you work closely with natural resources organizations and y'all use spatial data, analytics, and GeoAI. How does that work continue to stretch your own learning and skill development?
Yeah, at Esri, it's actually super fascinating. My role is a little unique within the Esri ecosystem. We typically have account managers who focus on one specific industry, and they tend to work with a book of business or a set of accounts or organizations that are like specifically trying to solve problems in that industry. I work in the natural resources sector, which encompasses or includes six different industries. So agriculture, forestry, mining, renewables, oil and gas, pipeline. And so I get to look horizontally across all these six industries and identify ways that we can take our technology, our GIS platform, some of our location intelligence, and help these businesses and organizations solve challenges across all six. For me, this is an incredibly stretch opportunity because my background is in energy, my background is in technology. I do not have the strongest agriculture background. And so, learning, precision farming is something that I'm having to, go through some of the resources we have internally, but also learning to really rely on my colleagues, my peers within the organization. Esri has a really strong team of teams model where no one individual is responsible for trying to know everything. So, coming in here, especially as a kind of a senior hire, I've been really focused on trying to add impact or provide impact as quickly as possible, but doing so without having to overburden myself by trying to learn and master everything at once. And so, really learning to like lean on that team of teams, like I said, working with folks in product, working with folks in marketing, folks in engineering and sales has helped me kind of, stretch my understanding of these different industries and add value.
Very cool. Yeah. All right. Let's talk more about AI. Would you be able to share a moment when applying AI or Geo AI changed how you approached a challenge in natural resources or in sustainability?
Yeah, we there's one moment that really comes to mind, and it was actually a demo that I saw, and it was the response I saw from the audience of the demo. In the last year, so what I've been witnessing is a lot of companies are looking for conversational experiences. They want to be able to have, a chat with, some kind of chatbot or AI assistant within their environment that can help them surface some new insight that they maybe would not have been able to do in the past. GIS is an incredible science, right? And we always kind of say like it's the science of where. It's kind of the unifying thread across multiple other disciplines as well. The thing that I found really impactful about it is when you add that kind of location intelligence, that spatial element to some of the problem solving and the questions you're asking, it helps you kind of see things in relation to each other. So for example, if you're looking at where you want to maybe build a new data center, right? That's going to power some of these AI models and some of this technology that we're all talking about today. It's important to know with what is around those surrounding areas and what is the context in which you may be investing to build those sites. So there are some site selection things you can do by looking at an Excel spreadsheet, but wouldn't it be more insightful to have some kind of visualization or some kind of spatially intelligent map that can show you what is around you in proximity? So maybe what are some protected wetlands that you may want to avoid for potential, challenges when you're building that site? What else is going to be near you as far as, distribution of workforce as well, as far as other resources that can help you kind of feed into what you're trying to build in that location. So, I think, having that location intelligence, having that kind of spatially aware map really helps you better plan and better understand where to invest and what are some of the things you can maximize from that investment as well.
I like that. And it also, I mean, it sounds like a situation where, like you said, it is very helpful sometimes to kind of clear the noise out so that way you can figure out what you need to focus on. But that seems like a situation where you're kind of adding all of the noise to start with and then parsing out to see what you actually need to look at, like what you actually need to pay attention to and what is just noise. So I like that.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, one of the things that you hear all the time about AI is like garbage in, garbage out as far as data is concerned, right? You have this vast kind of corpus of information that you're feeding into these things, but it's really important to take the time to kind of refine and QC in the beginning, because then that allows you to have better insights towards the end. And this is an iterative process. You keep working on it as well, right? And it's kind of the same thing with kind of building your own skill set. You kind of start with like this broad range of, background and context, and you just important to keep refining it as you go through the process of developing yourself as well. I think that's where you see real value, either through the work you're doing for yourself as well.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Now, obviously, one of the biggest things that we're talking about today is continuous learning and that kind of continuing education. It's not just for doctors and lawyers anymore. It is something we are all going to be doing our entire lives long. Um, if you are trying to balance ongoing learning, like taking a course, with having a day job and a life, like most of us do, that can be really difficult. Do you have any tips for people if they are trying to juggle both and want to avoid burnout?
Yeah, it's so funny you say that. I follow this, I guess you'll call him a fitness influencer slash like philosopher, and he really likes to distill it down to what he calls exercise snacks. So, people always have this like goal if they want to achieve incredible returns as far as fitness is concerned over a certain period of time, right? And it can be daunting to just start. So rather than trying to go and initially start a workout 1 hour a day, going forward, why not just start with 10 or 15 minutes and just make it digestible so we can get in the morning and the afternoon, but build that foundation, build that momentum so that it becomes easy and easier to approach that fiction. I've applied that rather to my approach in learning. Like I buffer myself and my days and have these focus times where it just gives me an opportunity to read widely and read broadly. Like I said, I'm a big fan and proponent of reading across other industries and sectors, because you never know where that moment of inspiration is going to come from. And you never know what learnings and like knowledge can be applied to the space that you're focused on as well. So for me, it's kind of carving out that time to give myself this little like learning snacks breaks where I can really focus on that as well. I know it sounds it's kind of funny to think of it that way, but like, when I put on my calendar, people respect it. And, when you build that discipline as well, I found that, my leadership kind of honors that as well. My peers respect it as well. And one of the things I try to do also is use that time to learn, but then also bring that knowledge in-house as well and share that with my peers. So I'm a big fan of reading broadly. Like I said, I typically do a lot of market intelligence and assessments. I share a lot of information with my colleagues to make sure that they're aware of what others are doing in that space, both from a competitive perspective, but from a complementary perspective as well. How can we maybe partner with them and see what's going on? And same thing with leadership as well. On the burnout side, I mean, one of the things I think is really important is don't try to learn and do everything at once. It's such an overwhelming topic. There's so much out there, right? And I think it can be so easy to fall into trouble. I need to go and learn Python today. I need to start building agentic solutions tomorrow, right? There's so much out there that can be very, very overwhelming. I think it's important to just pick one problem, pick one workflow that could be applicable to your day to day, and start there. Like I said, the career OS was my starting point, but then that branched off to so many other pathways as well.
No, I think that sounds really awesome. And honestly, as you were saying it, I was like, oh yeah, that is totally my MO. I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna start tomorrow, but we're not starting with, 5 minutes. We're gonna start with the full routine that I would love to see
Right.
myself doing for however. And yeah, it doesn't tend to go very well. So
We all fall
I,
to that
I
trap,
very
right?
much Yes. Yeah, well, because I mean, and we get why we do it, right? Because we're trying to
Right.
make a change, and you think in your mind, like, well, I'll just make the shift. And then once it's made, then I'll stay in that new shift. And it's like, no, you're not going to want to do that after like 3 or 4 days. It's going to be old. It won't be fun anymore. I get it. I think that's a really genius way to do it. Did you like kind of start in one area, or did you bounce around and try and find something that would interest you? Or how did you handle this when you were, trying to pace yourself?
Yeah, so actually, I started in one area specifically, and before my current role at Esri, I joined a startup in the healthcare field, and I was brought in to kind of help them scale their enterprise, go to market motion. But I've never worked in healthcare before, so there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of bureaucracy as well. And like I said, I already had this career copilot that I built, and I made it kind of my career and researcher learning copilot. So after every sales call that I had, I would go back and use it to kind of refine my approach and help coach me up to be a better communicator and orator in that way. I would go and review the previously saved calls from all my colleagues as well, and use that to kind of again help me better understand how to engage, what are the problems that are common problems our customers are trying to solve for, and how do we approach our technology to solve those problems as well. So for me, it actually helped me ramp or kind of like accelerate my understanding of that space. So what would have probably taken me about a year of time if I got a traditional, let me take some notes and sit in on calls and so on, I was able to do in about 3 months because I was leveraging that kind of AI copilot to help brief me, help me better prep for my calls, help me do better discovery as well, and again help me better understand the industry and the people that we're trying to serve.
No, I love that idea. I like that you kind of gave it something useful to do. You were able to fast track yourself based on what you knew and kind of do that in concert with the AI. This is a fabulous idea. All right. One of the things you said earlier was talking about, learning something and then making sure you share it with your team. I know
Mhm.
Esri has a very strong emphasis on knowledge sharing and community. It's one of the things that I love most about talking to Esri people. In your experience, how does Esri support mentorship, both formally and informally, for its employees and partners?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, for me, it actually started when I first joined as we, organize this really, really impactful base camp where they take all the new hires of a specific cohort and they bring you to Redlands. So, Esri HQ. And I like to joke that you're drinking the Kool-Aid, but really what you're getting is exposure to like what makes Esri so powerful, so magical, right? You're surrounded by these, for lack of a better term, geospatial nerds and people who are just so passionate about, what you can do with location, right? And so for me, it was really, really interesting being surrounded by folks who, again, I come from a non-traditional background within the Azure ecosystem. So being able to engage with these people one-on-one and learning, what do they actually do and how and where do I kind of fit into the larger picture was impactful. While you're at Basecamp, Azure provides a series of leaders who visit with you and kind of provide a good overview of, what your career could look like within Esri. And again, that team of teams model, who else could be part of that career journey, that career arc as well. And so from that initial experience, I was able to identify people that I could potentially work with or folks that I wanted to just learn from. I've always been a fan of identifying mentors early in any situation, especially in any profession, and not necessarily asking for sponsorship, but just asking for awareness. What are the things to be mindful of as I'm kind of navigating my future path here? What are some opportunities and what are some like key problems that need to be solved that don't have a solution today? And what I found is by chasing those problems rather than chasing titles, mentors and sponsors kind of they will surface for you because they'll see that you care about the business, you care about the organization, you care about bettering those around you, not just seeking promotion. And so that's one of the things that has served me well in my career. As far as formal and informal, is that mantra of like not chasing titles, chasing problems, but then also asking for a little bit of guidance as to what to expect around the corner of the next step in my career.
I think that's one of my favorite things to ask about people. It's also why, like, not just my professional networks, but like my personal networks, my friends and
Hmm.
stuff. I have intergenerational friends because, like, I would love a crystal ball, and mostly no one has one, as far as I've been able to tell thus far. And so being friends with people who are 5, 10, 15 years older than me can sometimes give you a little bit of a window into things that might matter to you then, or things that, you might not be thinking of now. So I love this. I'm a big, big fan of mentors kind of both ways. It doesn't just go from the
Mm.
top down. If people who are, let's say, underrepresented professionals, especially people who might not have had a clear path into emerging technologies, what advice would you give these people if they're trying to find mentorship or sponsorship and they are not following what is, let's say, the traditional career path to get there?
Sure. Earlier in the intro, you talked about a few of the things that I do outside of Esri. One of them is, some community and some technology groups. So the Colorado Technology Association is one that's been really, really impactful for my career, especially since I moved to Denver. When I first moved to Denver, I didn't have a base of contacts here. I didn't have a professional network at all. And so, by first of all, volunteering through the Colorado Technology Association and then joining their board of young professionals as well, it gave me this platform to really kind of raise my profile, to learn what others were doing within the local Denver ecosystem as well, and then to find opportunities to kind of serve and give back, either by mentoring, like you said, right? It kind of goes both ways, right? It's important to seek mentors. It's also important to pass it on to the generation after you and to be a mentor as well, and to find mentees who you can learn from you and who you can learn from. That has served me well. So I think, whatever city you're in, whatever environment you're in, I guarantee you there's some kind of startup incubator community. There's going to be some hub of folks who are like-minded like you, trying to either break in or who've already kind of broken into this space and are trying to solve kind of the next tier of problems. And so, doing that research, looking at, what's around you and finding ways to just be present. It's really important to find those rooms and make sure that you're included or part of those conversations. And usually it just takes stepping out of your comfort zone, truly. For me, it was, volunteering at events where I didn't know a single soul. And by the time I left, I was on a board. I had, won a few awards through like that investment there as well in that time. But I left feeling so proud of the community that I was able to immerse myself in, the community I was able to build, and the network that I was able to build as well. So, I really want to challenge people to do the research, find those rooms and those spaces. And, it's much easier than you think to get yourself into those rooms, but it's really important that you start to do the work and you start to ask as well.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that, we never want to tell our parents that, yeah, that the stale advice they gave us was right. But I'm telling you, when my dad said 90% of life is showing up, he was not wrong. So truly, show up for these things. The worst thing that can happen is you go to these rooms, you realize, oh, this is not where I want to be. And then you don't waste your time there again. But,
Yeah.
You're not going to know unless you, kind of give stuff a shot. And I very much appreciate this advice because there's been times that I have been, in need of professional development and have tried to go about that a couple different ways. And this would definitely have been a much easier task than the other methods I tried.
Can
Okay.
I add two things to that? Sorry.
Yeah, please.
You touched on something I think is really important. The first one is, showing up in these rooms is really important, but I think one thing I really want to like harp on is show up prepared. It's important to do your prep work, to do your research before you get into these rooms, because you only have that one chance to make that first impression. And you may not have, let's say, the most rigorous tech background, but if you show up with, honest and genuine curiosity about the people in the room, the problems that they're solving, and maybe their journey to get to that same room that you're in as well, you'll find that you'll be much better received than if you just show up there asking for a job, right? So,
Yes.
I would say, like, do your homework, show up prepared. That's the first thing. The second point that you made that I think is really important, I do want to pause and like make people reflect on. It's okay to fail fast. If you're going to try something and be in a room and you realize that that's not the right space for you, but that's not the right area that aligns with your passions or where you want to be, it's okay to tap out early and to pivot into something else. Like, rather than trying to force yourself into a situation where this isn't a natural fit or cohesive fit, right? Like, I'm of the mindset to fail fast and pivot if you need to. Right. And so that was a limited amount of time that, you burn or you waste as well. So sorry to interrupt you, Meg, but I just wanted to kind of highlight those two.
Please, this is your interview. Interrupt me all the time. No, I think you're right. I think it is incredibly important to make sure that you are. I love fail fast. That's something I never heard before I came to Power to Fly, and I think it is one of the driving principles of my life now, because failure is how we learn. Truly, like our brains are not set up to learn from success. We learn from failure. So I think it is a very, very powerful thing to be able to do, and especially to recognize that like you're gonna fail like at least
Hmm.
47 times in your life. So why did not just start ticking them off right now?
If you're not
Um,
failing, you're not trying. That's kind of the mantra,
exactly.
honestly.
Yes.
Right. So.
Precisely. All right. If someone is looking to make a career pivot or really commit to continuous learning, What is one mindset shift or habit that has made the biggest difference for you? We talked about starting small and kind of digestible, but is there anything that really help kind of things click into place for you?
Yeah, for me, the biggest one was not to look at my career as a career ladder. You know, coming out of school and when I first started, I was asked, what is your 3-year plan? What's your 5-year plan? And I was um, pretty rigid in how I kind of laid out my career and where I wanted to be. And then you find that your career isn't a ladder, it's such a circuitous, it's a web, right? And you have like these moments of like introspection and you have these moments of growth. And, sometimes it feels like you're regressing, but you're not. You're just picking up a different skill set that will serve you later in life. And you may not be aware of how it will serve you. And so, I've been really interested in like what is going on with the career millennial crisis. Like a lot of my peers are pivoting to very different and distinct roles right now. And I've been asking myself a big reason why. And I think a big part of it is because most of us were taught and raised and have tried to follow the career ladder path. But companies and businesses have just evolved and changed so drastically from when we started, 12 years ago, that I think it's important to keep accumulating those relationships. Think about it as kind of that career web, and just think about what you can do to keep building on experiences as well. And so for me, what I found is the titles come as I choose to continue to better myself and pick up these different skills, be it AI, be it analytics, be it stretching myself across different industries, right? I'll be able to kind of progress myself in my career because I've been able to pick up such distinct and diverse experiences and exposure as well. That serves me in rooms and in discussions that I never planned on in the past. I think it's important to have a North Star, like, have your values be what guides you in the process and, stay true to that. But do not be so rigid that you think you need to go from this to this to this in a linear fashion. Because what ends up happening is if something happens and you take a step back or you kind of pause for a longer period in time, it feels like you're regressing. And that's when you become self-critical. That's when the anxiety kicks in. It's just a very unhealthy relationship with your career. So, I really like the mindset of like a career web, and you just keep like interlacing things together and keep building upon those experiences.
I completely agree. I think we first started calling it a lattice, which makes sense if you're a gardener, but not if you're pretty much
Mhm.
anything else. And so I love thinking of it as a web because, it really is. There's not just one career path anymore. You don't just go get a job, sit there, get the gold watch and retire. Like
Mhm.
that's not the way life and work works right now. And so I think you're right. I think there's a lot of us who are like, we were promised X and now we're at
Mhm.
Q. So I think it is really interesting to see where the mindset shift is happening. And I think you're right. I think a lot of us are realizing that life is both shorter and longer than you think it is. So,
Sure.
let's spend our lives doing things that we actually care about, things that make us passionate, things that light us up. All right. My last question for you. If someone is looking to make a career pivot, learn a new skill, or they just want to continue learning after today's conversation ends, if they only take one step towards that journey, what should that one step be?
I think that one step should be pick pick a problem that is new or unique to you and find creative ways to solve it, but just pick one problem. And it can be something that's in your day to day today. It could be something that you've already experienced at work as well, right? But I'm a big fan of again chasing problems, not titles. And so I think if you can find ways to really narrow that your focus into that one thing and allow yourself to go deep on that and allow yourself to really understand like what are the true ways to solve that, either with technology or with people or with processes, right? Like there's going to be some things out there, but I've always found that the more research you are into solving that one problem, the easier it will be to then kind of branch out and identify other tangential problems as well. And you again going back to kind of that web analogy, like things are interconnected in ways that you don't really understand. But the farther you go into like understanding the problem solving mindset, I think the easier it will be to kind of navigate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that is going to bring us to just about the end of time. But Yomi, thank you so much for joining us today. A big thanks to Esri for loaning you to us. But this has been really great to get to learn from you. I sincerely hope we get to do this again sometime.
Thanks, Meg. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's so great to have this conversation.
Of course. All right, y'all. That was Lomi Olufowoshe, representing Esri today. Thank you all so much for sticking with us through this session, and I can't wait to see what we've got upcoming in our next session. Thanks so much.
Bye, y'all.